Hello everyone, it's Keith, your game master and master of games, here to talk to you about the Fantasy Hero character system. So this character sheet will give you some stats and basic information on how the character is built. There's a couple of really important elements in this game system that I want to cover. So we'll just take them from the top, and if you have any questions, of course, leave them below in the comments, or you can ask me during the next game. So first off, we have characteristics, pretty typical of any game system. I've taken the liberty to use Tamer as an example here, and the characteristics for normal humans is typically the value of 8 in all of these top 6 characteristic scores. So strength, dex, con, int, ego, and presence. Now those stats, some of them you might be very familiar with. Strength, of course, is your physical power. Dexterity is how nimble you are. Constitution is how hardy and healthy physically you are. Intelligence is your quick wit. Ego is more of a wisdom or strength of will. And presence is the amount of sort of gravitas that you carry. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be scary to have a lot of presence. You can just have an aura about you. In Tamer's case, it's his sheer size that gives him a good presence. OCV and DCV, that stands for offensive and defensive combat value, and that's typically based off your dex, and that has to do with how you can avoid being hit and hitting. So striking a target and avoiding that target. OMCV and DMCV is magic or mental, and that is your strength of that's your offensive mental combat value and defensive mental combat value. As you can see, Tamer is a little puppy dog. Speed is how many actions you take per turn. So 2 speed over in the speed chart. I did the previous video. You can look at that. PD stands for physical defense. ED stands for energy defense, and that is, well, just what it sounds like. How much damage you can take physically, or how much you absorb. You have to get over 8 damage to do any real damage to Tamer. Your recovery is how much you gain when you take a recovery action. That's either once per turn, or you can burn one of your phases to take a recovery. Endurance is how much endurance you have before you get tired out. Tuckered out is a thing. And body is how much damage you take before you die. Of course, you have to be negative double your body. So in Tamer's case, he has to be negative 18 to actually be a corpse. From 0 to negative 17, he is considered bleeding out. And either the bleeding has to stop, or it continues until he's finally dead. 49 stun. Stun is the amount of damage you can take before being knocked unconscious. And yeah, that's the pretty basic stats. There shouldn't be too many questions as far as that goes. You get a current status up here to make it easy while you're playing the game to keep track of the important stats in endurance, body, and stun, because usually you use those during combat. Your vital information is information if Tamer was just to punch somebody, he would be doing 4.5 d6 of damage. He can lift 600 pounds, and using his endurance cost him 4. Using his strength costs him 4 endurance. That's every time he uses his strength. There's some modifiers for weapons. We'll talk about that later. So again, this vital information is just like a quick sheet for combat reference. Your OCV, DCV, everything you're taking from the characteristics over on the right-hand side. Combat skill levels. This is again just this is where you're keeping your skill levels. You actually track them in the and down below in the character sheet. Important thing about critical hits. In this game, if you roll half or less what you need, what your target number is. So for instance, if your target number is 14 or less to hit, and you roll a 7 or less, you consider that a critical hit, which does maximum damage. So you don't even have to roll the dice. You just give me the total of damage you would be doing. So pretty strong doing critical hits. Presence attack, again, taking the information from over here. Presence is 20. Presence attack is 4d6. And there's a chart to see how effective presence attacks are. Presence attack is are the ability to shout or intimidate or throw a command out to an enemy and see if they are kind of stunned and will do what you say. Generally, it's for, it could be used to frighten or demoralize, things like that, or just get someone's attention. All right. After that, further, we're just going to read across the sheet to movement. Movement is typically based on your character. Tamer is a little bit slower than most characters, and non-combat movement is pretty inconsequential because we're not really measuring things, measuring distance during when we're not in combat. Generally, in combat, you can move half of your distance and still take an attack action, but you cannot take an attack action after. You can't take an attack action and then move. So you always have to move first and then take your half move. Let's see. Over on the right side again, attack maneuvers. This is your standard attack maneuvers. We covered those a little bit. We can discuss the details, but they're pretty self-explanatory. These are the things you can do typically, and of course you can be creative, and if something doesn't fall directly into these maneuvers, we can figure it out. Tamer uses a great club or a great hammer, depending on what you want to call it. But in this case, it is a great club. It does 7d6 of damage versus your physical defense. It is so it applies to your stun, and it costs 6 endurance total to swing that baby around. He does have levels with it to get +2 OCV, and that is baked into his skills. Over in the defenses category, there's a little bit of things here that are different. So resistant and normal PD, the reason these are significant are there are 2 different types of attacks, if you will, in this game. There's more than 2, but 2 are the most common, which is your normal attacks, which apply to your stun, and your killing attacks, which apply damage to your body. Now, killing attacks are only apply only to resistant PD. Your normal PD will apply to your normal attacks. So, for instance, if Tamer was attacked, if he was stabbed with a knife, his PD would do nothing. He would just get stabbed and take the amount of damage to his body. However, because he has resistant PD of 4, on an 11 or less roll, that means if his armor gets in the way, then he can defend from that killing attack with 4 points of resistant PD. Same thing with normal. His energy defense is 5 with a +3 resistant on 11 or less. He has no mental defense, no power defense, and no flash defense, and those are different for different types of attacks or magical abilities would take off of those defenses, and in this case, Tamer has none. And now we're over to one of the most interesting aspects of this game. This is the part that balances out the characters. So in this game, you have a bunch of the numbers and the cost of these things are, not something you need to worry about. I'll do all the calculations of the costs. But when you have a character with a certain amount of power, you need to balance that by basically paying for that power with what's considered disadvantages or complications. And what this does is this is a good way of creating balance in the game and also creating great role-playing opportunities and opportunities to sort of develop your character. And for Tamer, you sort of all know from the previous games sort of what he's all about and what makes him tick. So these should all be pretty obvious. The number one complication is distinctive looks. He's very large. He's got body tattoos, and he's got an imposing appearance. So it's hard to kind of walk around a town with him without getting attention. So that's worth 5 points. He's hunted by the slavers and the blood coven. So the blood shaman coven and the slavers that they were employed by, they are all looking for him because he spent 10 years or 12 years of his life with them, and they want him to be part of their crew again. So they're out to get him. His next complication is he gets double effect from poisons and toxins. Hasn't really come in to play in the game right now, but just based on his origin story and how much he was affected by the blood coven's neurotoxins and, if you will, drugs effects, he is susceptible to those things. He's got 2d6 of unluck because he's had a pretty rough go of life. And the way unluck works is if he's in a particular interesting situation and he rolls those 2 dice, if he rolls ones, then that is bad. And the more ones he rolls on those 2d6, then if he rolls snake eyes, then it's significantly worse. But that'll come up periodically in the game, and it's not just the die rolls. He generally will have bad luck kind of haunting him as he goes. The next one is Berserk, and we haven't seen that in play yet, but we soon will. He's got to make an ego roll to basically, anytime he's using his aspects, which are his tattoos in his beast aspects, if he uses those, he has to make an ego roll to maintain control, or he sort of loses it and may indeed attack friend or foe. 6 points for his memory loss, because he has a hard time recalling things from his past, and it can affect him, obviously, in the future. The last one is he gets double effect from mind-altering magic, because he was enslaved for a period of time with that magic, so he's susceptible to it, and that is it for Tamer. So this is how the character is sort of defined. Of course, role-playing and taking the making decisions based on your character's origin and things, that's all what role-playing is. The complications just sort of cement those in and give you some reference points to to establish your character's decision making and things like that. So that is it. Defenses, let's see, senses, it's not really that important. Tamer doesn't have anything significant. And the next part of the character sheet is the character information, of course, name, height, weight, all that basic stuff. And then here's your skills, perks, and talents, and your powers and equipment. So the skills, perks, and talents, the first 5 that are here are skills that everyone gets. They're called, oh gosh, I don't remember the term, but basically they're every person gets these on an 8 or less unless you buy them with some increased ability. So everybody has concealment, deduction, disguise, medical, and stealth. They can do these things just by being, just in general. If you have higher numbers in here, that means points were spent to raise them up. And then Tamer has animal handling, hunting. He can read, write, and sketch. He has knowledge of fauna, and he has Northern is the base language, but he's got Southern as well. So he's got the ability to speak 2 languages. The spells, powers, and equipment, he's got heavy leather brigandine armor, which covers his vital organs and chest, and that's 11 or less coverage. He needs freedom of movement because he's so large, but of course you can purchase with in the game, you can purchase heavier armor or different types of armor for each character. That's depending on who you are. The powers that he has is he has the tattoos, which give him beast aspects. He can use that to get the strength of the bear. With boar, he gets extra running. With a roar, he gets an additional presence attack. And with the aspect of wolf, he gets an additional speed point. Now these, of course, all cost additional endurance, and he has to make an int check to activate them, and they take double the endurance, which is, the endurance right here is already doubled. But the reason, you have to choose only one, so he can't use multiple aspects at the same time. And this is his beast tattoos. Of course, you remember the disadvantage, where he has to maintain his ego roll to not go berserk while he's using them, but they give him a significant edge in combat, and obviously significant edge in his stats. So that's an interesting way to kind of get his character to do neat things. And that's it. That's the character sheet. That's Tamer. I can do a video for everybody's character sheet to sort of give the kind of the once over and ask if you have any questions specifically about the abilities or how they work. But pretty sure everybody is familiar enough with rolling the dice and moving your mice that you can sort of get a grasp of the game system as it is. But don't get overwhelmed. This is not intended to be something you have to memorize or know like the back of your hand. It's just I want you to start slowly getting familiar with these things. And of course, I'll have copies of the character sheets so I can easily reference them and sort of know what you're all about. But read your sheet when you get yours and just have it handy. And I hope you enjoy the game system. And it was great showing you this character sheet. We'll be around next time for more character action. And thanks again.